Do not hold back. Lift up your voice like a trumpet. Good morning. Please be seated. God has spoken into all of your space this morning. I want to begin with our Isaiah text. And I want to encourage you to reach for a Bible nearby or to grab your bulletin so you can look at the words as we work through this passage a little bit. I can tell you that it left me with some wrestling this past couple of weeks. And in our tradition, we don't always start with a sermon with a Bible in hand or a text in hand, but today we need to because the next words in this passage demand our attention. The next words in this passage call us up short. Announce to my people their rebellion. We hear God say, right? Announce their transgressions to the people. Announce them with a full throat, with a voice like a ram's horn on the Day of Atonement. And of what are God's people being convicted? People like ourselves, gathered in places of worship. People who, the verse tells us, delight to know God's ways. People who are seeking God out. Of what are they being accused? Some history here will help. But I rest with you the possibilities that in this passage, God's people are being confronted for seeking God with their heads and not their hearts, with their words and not their lives, and perhaps even of believing that we do God a favor with our prayers offered here. The text comes to us as part of the story of our people, the people of Israel. These were people who, like us, were living their lives faithfully worshiping, saying their prayers, and singing the psalms. Then a foreign power began to press in on the defenses of their country. The Babylonians captured and brutally conquered Jerusalem, the heart and the identity of their land, destroying the temple in the process and removing many of their people. Those who remained were dazed and stunned, and those who returned from exile, even 50 years later, struggled to find a familiar landmark. One of the great theologians today, Walter Brueggemann, writes that this was their 9/11. The destruction of the temple by the Babylonians was the moment when everything they held to be true, everything they knew to be safe and secure was stripped away. And like after our own experience of 9/11, nothing would be the same again. This third section of Isaiah that's in front of us today was written probably as an exegesis, as a reflection by people returning from exile on older writings so that they could reclaim and recall who they were, that they could connect with God again in this time of chaos and uncertainty. Political events have devastated their city and their temple and has destroyed their identity as a people. They are left needing to recall who they are and whose they are. So they did what we do. They put on familiar clothes. They cooked familiar foods and sang familiar songs. They began to pray the old prayers and to keep the old fasts. They trusted that by these external signs of faith, they would be restored to God in righteousness, inwardly focused on the rightness of their prayer and of their worship. However, they did nothing to change the plight of the poor around them, the homeless in their midst, the hungry in their cities, or those who needed to be invited to come inside with them. And it's into that space that God speaks. God God, the eternal lover, creator, mother, and father, calls humanity up short, speaking into our painful human attempt to reassert control over our lives. This is God speaking to our ancestors, through our ancestors, and deep down into our lives today. Worship, this thing we're doing here today, is the place that we inhale God's love so we can exhale it into a broken world. But if perfect worship in perfect spaces becomes our focus, how are we remaining open to God's vision for our whole community? For most of us, and I'll speak for myself here, privilege keeps me warm and dry at night. Privilege means I can decide to notice the face of the panhandler on the street. I can decide to work for justice. I can decide to issue an invitation to come inside. But privilege can also mean something else. Privilege can mean that we choose to hide our shame. We choose to hide our regrets. That we come to church on Sunday mornings in a nicely washed car and in clean clothes, but we are not able to share what's really on our hearts, what's really carrying in our soul. Or we might choose to stay home alone with the hard things in our life: alcohol abuse, a broken marriage, a broken relationship with a child. We might stay home with those things on a Sunday morning instead of sharing them with each other. Prayer in this place, in this community, is a transformation of ourselves. And it's to be so that we might be in the service of God. As I said, I really wrestled with this text this week. This is a hard one. And it left me thinking about a story that a friend shared with me. She was a school teacher at the time. She's retired now. And she was one of those super cool teachers, right, that everybody wants to have. And she would let the kids in her 4th grade class use her cell phone, and they would do things like make videos of themselves doing Shakespearean plays. And just a really imaginative teacher. Well, she had this little guy in her class one year who just didn't get with the program. He was defiant. He was a bit destructive. And he was that kid who was always in the middle when trouble broke out. And one morning, she shared with me that while she was in church, worshiping, he came into her mind. And as she walked forward to the Eucharist, as she walked forward to these rails, she imagined herself carrying him, bringing him with her up to be fed for communion. A month later, she gave the kids in her class a creative writing assignment. They were supposed to write about a time in their lives of transformation, where things changed suddenly in their lives. So this little guy wrote his paragraph, and he turned it in. And it turns out he wrote about the day when Mrs. Campbell started loving me. That prayer transformed her. We come into this place not to be perfect or to have it all together, but to be broken together, to be human together. The breaks are where God lingers, where God transforms us to be that lantern of light that we hear about in the gospel. This reading challenges us here at St. Peter's to be an outpost in the world. In the world of perfect social media posts and beautiful Facebook pictures and glossy vacation photos, we are called to be an outpost of what transformed brokenness looks like. And in this text that was written hundreds of years before Jesus lived, that Jesus knew and read, we hear God saying that much much as we might like keeping this light safe in our loving family, we are instead challenged to throw open those doors and to share it with anybody and everybody, to feed, to gather, and to invite. This congregation, along with places of worship around our world, are outposts. We are a site of resistance against the notion that if we're lined up perfectly, doing exactly the right things, we'll be safe from what breaks us and scares us and challenges us. We are safe, we are protected, but through God's grace. And the one who protects and creates and loves us also loves those guys out there. Those who might be hungry, not just for the wonderful feeding work we do, but for an invitation to be part of this community. All this worship and this prayer, this feeding that we're going to do here this morning, gathered together, all of it is to carry us back out those doors, to send us back out there, transformed, different, to a world that needs you, to a world that needs to know that we carry a story, the story of a God who is present in the breaking and present in the healing, always transforming us and bringing us closer and closer to that God. And that's our true commission. That is the great true commission. The reason that we kneel here today, the reason we're going to pass the peace in a minute, the reason we're going to lift our hands in offering, that is our commission. To be, as the gospel says, the light on a hill. And to shine light brightly on this hill.